In today's video, we're diving into one of the most shocking twists ever to hit Beyond the Gates 2025. When Bill uncovered Hayley's elaborate scheme, everything he thought he knew about loyalty, love, and power shattered in an instant. What began as quiet suspicion erupted into uncontrollable fury, and with just 6 devastating words, Bill sealed Hayley's fate. But this wasn't just about revenge, it was about justice, pride, and the unraveling of every hidden alliance behind Fairmont Crest's perfect facade. As Bill's anger rippled through the family, Leslie, Danny, and Nicole each found themselves trapped in the fallout of a war that none of them could escape. Today, we'll uncover the secrets that turned allies into enemies, and explore how one betrayal ignited a chain reaction that could destroy them all. Stay until the end, because nothing at Fairmont Crest will ever be the same again. After exposing Hayley's deception, the calm exterior that Bill had built for years fractured completely. His fury was not loud, it was heavy, calculated, and absolute, the kind of rage that consumes everything it touches. Those 6 words he delivered to Hayley weren't just a threat, they were a verdict. They carried the weight of betrayal, the collapse of trust, and the realization that every moment of kindness he had shown her had been turned into a weapon against him. His vow to send her to prison wasn't born of vengeance alone, it came from the humiliation of being fooled by someone he once believed in, perhaps even loved. The walls of Fairmont Crest, once symbols of prestige and power, seemed to close in on him, echoing the chaos that now governed his thoughts. Yet beneath the surface of his anger was something darker, guilt, the sense that he should have seen this coming, that Hayley's ambition was always too sharp to be innocent. His rage was as much directed at himself as it was at her, a punishment for the blindness he refused to admit. The revelation of Hayley's plot sent ripples throughout the estate. Leslie, who had once defended Hayley in public and shielded her from suspicion, found herself paralyzed between fear and remorse. She had played a silent role in protecting a lie, and now that lie had exploded with consequences she could never control. Every whisper in the corridors felt like an accusation, every glance a judgment. She began to realize that her loyalty had never been to Hayley but to the illusion of stability she thought Fairmont Crest provided. Now that illusion had burned to ash. Danny, meanwhile, was drowning in panic. The unraveling of Hayley's scheme threatened to expose a secret of her own, one tied to the missing financial records that Bill's auditors were already uncovering. The numbers didn't lie, and Danny knew that once Bill's anger turned outward, she might be next in his crosshairs. Her nights became sleepless, haunted by the ticking of the clocks that seemed to mock her as time ran out. Nicole stood apart from the chaos, watching with the detached poise of a strategist. She had anticipated this storm long before anyone else did, perhaps even nudged it along. For her, Hayley's downfall wasn't a tragedy but an opportunity. Bill's fury made him reckless, and a reckless man could be guided or manipulated into serving a higher purpose. Nicole's eyes were on the long game, the shifting alliances, the vulnerable positions of her enemies, the cracks forming in the Dupree legacy. She saw power bleeding out of the cracks Hayley's betrayal had created, and she intended to claim it all. In her mind, Fairmont Crest was not a home but a battlefield, and every scandal was simply another weapon to be used wisely. But Hayley's motives weren't as simple as they appeared. Beneath the deceit, there was desperation. Her actions had been born not only from greed but from survival, the fear of being erased, of becoming another disposable name in a family history ruled by influence and control. She had played her game too boldly, thinking she could manipulate Bill's heart while advancing her own ambitions. Yet she underestimated how deeply betrayal could wound a man who had already built his life around perfection and control. Now, with everything laid bare, Hayley's silence became her only defense. Even as the threat of prison loomed, she refused to speak, as though protecting a truth that could still change everything. What was she hiding? Who else had been part of her plan? Bill's wrath infected everyone around him. Staff members whispered that his temper had reached a level unseen since the early years of the Dupree Empire, when ambition had often led to destruction. Some said he was collecting evidence quietly, preparing not only to destroy Hayley but to rebuild Fairmont Crest in his own image, without weakness, without mercy. Yet in the quiet moments, when he stood alone in his study surrounded by documents and memories, the fury twisted into something colder, regret. He replayed the moments when he might have stopped her, the late-night conversations that now sounded like warnings, the smiles that hid daggers. There was a ghost of affection still lingering, and it infuriated him more than her betrayal ever could. To feel anything for the woman who had orchestrated his humiliation was, to him, the ultimate failure. Leslie tried to salvage what she could, but guilt made her reckless. Her attempts to mediate only worsened Bill's suspicion. He began to wonder if Hayley had acted alone, or if others had quietly benefited from her schemes. The idea of conspiracy consumed him. Suddenly, every friendly face looked like a mask, every memory a deception. Danny's anxiety deepened as she noticed how Bill's assistants were beginning to trace her digital footprints. Nicole, ever watchful, began planting subtle doubts in Bill's mind about loyalty, about motives, about who could be trusted. She fed his paranoia while pretending to be his confidant, and slowly, Bill's rage became a weapon she could aim. The once glorious Dupree estate grew darker each day. The gardens went untended, the parties were cancelled, the laughter gone. Even the sunlight seemed harsher, cutting through the windows as if exposing the rot that had been hidden for years. It wasn't just about Hayley anymore, it was about the corruption that had always existed behind the gates, the lies that had built this dynasty brick by brick. And as Bill's investigation deepened, one thing became clear: the betrayal he uncovered was only the surface of something much deeper. There were forged documents in hidden safes, offshore transfers that predated Hayley's involvement, and phone records linking unexpected names together. The question was no longer how Hayley had deceived him, it was who had pushed her to do it. As the pressure mounted, Hayley's composure began to crack. There were moments when she seemed ready to speak, to reveal something that might change everything, but fear stopped her. Fear not of Bill, but of someone else, someone watching from the shadows. Danny caught a glimpse of this terror and realized that Hayley's imprisonment might only be the beginning of a larger war. Nicole, sensing this too, began to prepare for the next phase. She ordered quiet investigations, paying off people who once served Hayley. Leslie, torn between confession and self-preservation, considered disappearing entirely before the scandal reached her name. Fairmont Crest, once a fortress of elegance, had become a cage where every secret clawed to escape. Bill stood alone in the heart of it all, consumed by a vengeance he no longer understood. The 6 words he had said to Hayley echoed in his mind like a curse, binding him to an outcome that might destroy them both. Justice had become obsession, and beneath that obsession, a dangerous question lingered. What if the true enemy was not Hayley, but the empire he had built and the people who thrived under its corruption? What if every betrayal that haunted Fairmont Crest had started long before Hayley ever arrived? And as night fell over the estate, that question remained unanswered, pulsing like a heartbeat beneath the silence. As the storm at Fairmont Crest slowly settled into silence, the damage became impossible to measure. Bill's rage had left scars on everyone who stood too close, emotional, moral, and perhaps even physical. The estate, once a monument to elegance and wealth, had become a battlefield of secrets where trust no longer existed. Hayley's downfall might have brought temporary satisfaction, but it also unearthed something far more dangerous, a darkness that had always lived beneath the surface. Her imprisonment was not an end, only a pause, as whispers began to circulate that she had hidden evidence powerful enough to destroy Bill if it ever resurfaced. Some said she had left behind letters, recordings, maybe even an ally still inside Fairmont Crest, waiting for the right moment to strike. Leslie, overwhelmed by guilt, could no longer bear the weight of her own silence. Her decision to protect Hayley had cost her everything: her position, her peace, her sense of self. Every step she took through the halls of the mansion felt haunted, every glance in the mirror reminded her of the moment she chose complicity over truth. Danny, shaken by how close her own secrets came to being exposed, began to unravel quietly. Her loyalty had never been to Bill or Hayley, but to survival, and survival had become impossible in a place where every move was watched, every whisper recorded. Nicole, however, thrived amid the chaos. While others mourned the collapse, she saw an opening, a chance to claim power from the ruins. With Hayley gone and Bill consumed by guilt, Nicole's influence spread like smoke, quiet, poisonous, unstoppable. Yet the question lingered. Was Hayley truly defeated? Rumors grew of strange deliveries to the prison where she was held, of anonymous visits that Bill's lawyers couldn't trace. Even in silence, her shadow loomed large, her presence still shaping the fate of those who betrayed her. Bill tried to rebuild his life, but the fury that had once driven him now hollowed him out. He had won, but the victory felt empty, as if the price of justice had been his own soul. And as the lights dimmed across Fairmont Crest, one truth remained clear: no one there was innocent, and the gates that once promised protection had become walls that trapped them all. The story was far from over, because in places built on lies, destruction is never the ending, it's only the beginning of something far more dangerous.